The most amazing and uncomfortable day of my life commenced with an unforeseen encounter with my stepsister, Elena. It was a Thursday afternoon, and the house was undeniably still. The quiet ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room had me home alone, aimlessly flipping through television channels, trying to quell the boredom that had settled over me like a thick fog. My father and his wife Catherine were out for the day, attending to errands or whatever it was they did when they vanished into the world together. Their absence left Elena and me alone in the house, a prospect that usually filled me with a sense of peaceful solitude. But lately, things had been different. Elena and I had never been close. We were roughly the same age, yet our personalities were polar opposites. She was organized and meticulous, always with a plan, while I preferred a more laid-back, spontaneous approach to life. Our interactions were limited to polite greetings and cursory exchanges, a comfortable distance maintained between us. However, over the past few weeks I had noticed a shift in her demeanor. Her eyes would linger on me a moment too long, her presence a constant in whatever room I occupied, always a little too close for comfort. It was subtle, nothing overt, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that an unspoken current flowed between us. That afternoon, I was in the kitchen scrolling through my phone, the sunlight streaming through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room. I tried to ignore the strange energy that seemed to permeate the air whenever Elena was near. She had been in her room all day, or so I thought, but when I heard footsteps behind me, I knew she was about to make her presence known. "Hey!" Elena's voice broke the silence as she entered the kitchen. I looked up from my phone, my heart skipping a beat, as I saw her standing in the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. She appeared relaxed, yet there was something in her eyes, a spark of something that made my pulse quicken. "Hey," I replied casually, trying to maintain my composure. "What's up?" She shrugged, walking further into the kitchen, her gaze never leaving mine. "Not much, just felt like coming downstairs. It's pretty quiet in here." "Yeah, it is," I consented, placing my phone on the table as Catherine and Dad would be absent for some time. Elena glanced at the clock and then at me, a playful smile gracing her lips. "I know," she said, her voice imbued with a provocative tone. "That's why I came down." A knot tightened in my stomach, a blend of apprehension and excitement. There was something distinct in her gaze, playful yet serious, a glint in her eyes that both intrigued and unsettled me. She approached the stove, retrieved a glass from the cabinet, and filled it with water, moving with deliberate grace, each step measured as if she were aware of my rapt attention. I was captivated by her poise, her hair cascading loosely over her shoulders, her lips forming a knowing smile. "What are you doing here all alone?" she inquired, sipping from her glass and leaning against the counter, her gaze fixed on me. I shrugged, attempting to appear nonchalant. "Just bored, I suppose, killing time until they return." She nodded, her eyes still locked with mine. "You've been behaving oddly lately." Her remark took me by surprise. Elena bent her head, her smile broadening slightly. "What do you mean?" I replied, shocked by her remark. I had not intentionally been evading her, yet perhaps I had been subconsciously creating distance due to the tension between us, whatever its nature. "I've been experiencing growth, although I am uncertain how to handle it." "I am not evading you," I stated, though my tone lacked assurance. She arched an eyebrow and placed her glass on the counter. "Really? Because it seems as though you are." I shuffled uneasily in my seat, uncertain how to react. The reality was that I had been maintaining my distance. I could not comprehend the reason, but a change had occurred between us. I was uncertain about how to address the situation. I questioned whether it was solely my perception or if she experienced it as well. However, I had been attempting to disregard it. "Nevertheless, I've been occupied," I acknowledged weakly, aware it was an unpersuasive rationale. Elena's smile broadened as she approached, her eyes sparkling with an emotion I could not fully interpret. "Busy, huh? Too busy to even converse with me?" There was a playful lilt in her tone, yet beneath it I perceived a more profound sentiment, something she refrained from articulating. "I am not evading you, Elena," I repeated, my voice now quieter and less assured. She stepped closer, her body mere feet from mine. I sensed the tension in the room, the air thickening with unspoken energy. My pulse quickened, and I swallowed hard to maintain my composure. "I think you are," she said softly, her eyes searching mine. "But you don't have to." I blinked, startled by her words. The room seemed to constrict as the distance between us diminished with each passing second. Elena's presence was overpowering, her closeness impairing my ability to think clearly. "I do not comprehend what you are referring to," I stated, though the words felt insipid as Elena moved even closer, with her face mere inches from mine. I sensed the heat emanating from her body and the warmth of her skin against mine. My heart raced in my chest, and my mind surged with confusion as I attempted to comprehend the situation. This was my stepsister, someone I had cohabited with for years, yet in this moment she did not resemble a sister. She embodied something entirely different. "You don't have to pretend, Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know you feel it too." I stifled my breath, caught in my throat as her words resonated. She was correct. I had sensed the tension, the unspoken connection that had been brewing between us for weeks. I had attempted to dismiss it, to persuade myself it was a fluke, but now, with her so near and her gaze fixed on mine, denial was impossible. I began to speak, but my voice faltered, unable to articulate a coherent thought. Elena's hand then moved gently, grazing my arm. The slightest contact sent a surge of electricity through me, quickening my pulse. "You don't have to say anything," she whispered, a knowing smile gracing her lips. "Just stop pretending." Before I could respond, Elena leaned in, her lips brushing softly against my cheek. The gesture was simple, almost innocent, yet it ignited a fervor within me. My senses ignited. I remained immobilized by the overwhelming realism of the scenario, which surged over me like a tidal wave. This was not merely a figment of my imagination. This undeniable connection was real. Elena felt it too, and there was no turning back. Her lips lingered on my cheek for a fleeting moment, a tantalizing tease that sent my heart into overdrive. I could feel the warmth of her breath against my skin, the subtle pressure of her lips, a ghost of a touch that left me yearning for more. "Elena," I breathed, my voice barely audible. I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to pull away, to extinguish this flame before it consumed us both, but another part of me, the part I had been desperately trying to ignore, craved her closeness, yearned to explore the depths of this forbidden attraction. She didn't move away. Instead, she smiled that soft, knowing smile that made my heart race. When she asked, innocently, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened, the tension between us was undeniable, crackling in the air like static electricity. I began, but the words felt hollow, devoid of conviction. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, trying to reconcile the impropriety of the situation with the undeniable desire that surged within me. This was Elena, my stepsister. This was wrong, wasn't it? But then she moved again, stepping closer, her body brushing against mine. I could feel the heat radiating from her, the softness of her touch as she reached up and placed her hand gently on my chest. My breath hitched, and a wave of emotions washed over me: confusion, excitement, fear, and a longing I couldn't quite name. "Who says we can't?" she murmured. Our eyes met, a challenge evident within their depths. I swallowed hard, attempting to clear my mind, yet it was impossible to think clearly with her so near, her touch eliciting shivers along my spine. "Do I?" I asked softly, my voice trembling and uncertain. Eleanor's hand glided down my chest, her fingers tracing a slow, deliberate path that quickened my heartbeat. "It appears to me that you have desired this as much as I have," she remarked, her lips curving into a playful smile. Her words struck me like a thunderbolt. Was she right? Had I been harboring these forbidden desires all along? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a wave of guilt washing over me. But beneath the guilt, there was something else, a thrilling sense of anticipation, a realization that a part of me had been yearning for this moment without even knowing it. "I began, but my voice faltered once again. Elena took another step closer, her body pressed against mine. I could feel the rapid beat of her heart against my chest, her eyes intense with a mix of desire and curiosity. It was impossible to look away. "You don't have to be afraid," she whispered, her hand sliding up to caress my neck, her thumb gently tracing my jawline. "You don't have to pretend anymore." I felt like the world was tilting on its axis, everything I knew shifting beneath my feet. This felt wrong, so incredibly wrong, yet it also felt so right, as if we were destined to collide. "Eleanor!" I tried again, but my voice failed me. She shook her head, silencing me with the softest of touches, her fingers gently brushing against my lips. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice steady and real reassurance. "You don't have to say anything." And then, before I could protest, Elena leaned in, her lips pressing against mine in a kiss that was both tender and electrifying. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if giving me a chance to pull away, but I didn't. I found myself kissing her back, my hands instinctively moving to her waist, drawing her closer. The kiss deepened slowly and deliberately, a wave of heat surging through me, igniting every nerve and sense. Eleanor's hands tangled in my hair, her body pressed against mine, making it difficult to breathe, yet I was reluctant to break away. This was authentic, the occurrence was exhilarating, and the illicit excitement was addictive. When we eventually separated, breathless, with our foreheads touching, the world around us faded. Time appeared to halt, and nothing else mattered but the two of us, ensnared in an unforeseen moment. My voice trembled with amazement as I murmured, while Elena offered a subtle, wicked smile that quickened my heartbeat. "What does it feel like?" she inquired, her eyes shimmering with a blend of exhilaration and apprehension. I swallowed hard, my thoughts still in disarray. I was at a loss for words. It felt as though everything had shifted, as if the tension that had been brewing between us had finally erupted. Yet it also seemed that there was no turning back, no means to reverse what had just occurred. "I don't know," I confessed, my hands still resting on her waist. "But we cannot pursue this." Elena's smile faltered, yet she did not withdraw. Instead, she gazed at me with an intensity that made my heart race. "Why not?" she asked softly. "Why can't we?" Her words sent a jolt of confusion and excitement through me. This was wrong. It had to be. However, the way she looked at me and the way she had kissed me rendered everything so tangible, so undeniable. "I mean, you're my stepsister," I spoke, feebly, the words resembling an excuse more than a legitimate rationale. Elena arched an eyebrow, her smile re-emerging. "So?" she inquired, her tone gentle yet firm. "We are not connected by blood. We are merely two individuals. You need not allow that to hinder you." Her reasoning was perplexing. Legally, she was correct. We were not blood cousins, merely linked by our parents' marriage. Nevertheless, the significance of that connection felt burdensome, like a shadow looming over us. "But what about them? What about Dad and Catherine?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Elena's smile faded, and she sighed softly, stepping back slightly to create a little space between us. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice quiet. "But I know that I don't want to pretend like nothing's happening between us anymore." Her words hit me hard, and a wave of emotion surged through me. Guilt, confusion, and something deeper. Something I wasn't ready to name. She was right. We couldn't keep pretending. The tension between us had been growing for too long, and now that it had surfaced, there was no going back. But what were we supposed to do now? "I don't know if we can just ignore this," I said, my mind still reeling. Elena nodded, her eyes softening. "We don't have to figure everything out right now," she said gently. "We can take it one step at a time." Her words brought a strange sense of calm to the storm raging inside me. She was right. We didn't have to have all the answers right away. We just had to be honest with ourselves and each other about what was happening. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension in my chest begin to ease. "Okay," I said softly. "One step at a time." Elena smiled, a genuine smile this time, and the sight of it made my heart swell. "We'll figure it out," she said quietly, "together." And in that moment, I believed her. But the story was far from over. The days following that charged encounter in the kitchen passed in a haze of anticipation and apprehension. The tension between Eleanor and me only intensified, fueled by the memory of our forbidden kiss and the undeniable shift in our relationship. We tried to maintain a semblance of normality, to pretend that nothing had changed, but it was a futile effort. Every time we were in the same room, the air crackled, with unspoken desires, every accidental touch sending shivers down my spine. I could see the same intensity reflected in Elena's eyes, a magnetic pull that drew us closer despite the inherent danger of our connection. One evening, about a week later, I found myself restlessly perched on the living room couch, attempting to focus on the television screen, but my thoughts were a whirlwind of forbidden fantasies. I could hear Elena moving about in the kitchen, the clinking of dishes and the soft closing of cabinet doors, a symphony of domesticity that did little to soothe my restless mind. My father and Catherine were out for the evening, leaving the house eerily quiet, the silence amplifying the turmoil within me. I couldn't escape the memory of Elena, the way she had looked at me, the feel of her lips against mine, the lingering warmth of her touch. Every moment alone with her was charged with a palpable tension. The forbidden allure intensified daily. Just as I contemplated retreating to my room's solitude, Elena appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. She paused in the doorway, our eyes locking, and a shiver of anticipation coursed down my spine. "Are you all right, Alex?" she inquired, her voice gentle, yet tinged with apprehension. I nodded, my throat constricted, responding, "Yes, just reflecting." She entered the living room, discarding the dish towel onto a nearby chair before perching on the edge of the couch a few feet away. The atmosphere between us was charged with unexpressed yearnings, my heart racing in my chest. "What about?" she asked, her gaze probing mine. I hesitated, uncertain how to respond. The truth was, my thoughts had been preoccupied with her, with us since that night in the kitchen. However, I struggled to articulate those emotions and confront the reality of our forbidden connection. Ultimately, I managed to speak, my voice barely above a whisper. Elena nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Yeah, me too." We remained silent for a moment, the burden of unarticulated words palpable in the atmosphere. I sensed the magnetic attraction between us, compelling us closer with an undeniable force. I realized that if I did not depart at that very moment, we would transgress another boundary I was uncertain I was prepared to cross. Nevertheless, my body contradicted my rational judgment, and I found myself leaning toward her, ensnared by an unseen power. Elena did not withdraw. Her gaze softened, reflecting the desire evident in my own. "We had agreed to proceed cautiously," I murmured, my voice trembling with anticipation. Elena responded with a knowing smile that quickened my heartbeat. "We are proceeding slowly," she replied gently, "but that does not imply we should disregard what is unfolding." Her words ignited a spark within me, and before I could restrain myself, I leaned in, closing the distance between us. Elena met me halfway, her lips grazing mine in a kiss that was soft and tentative, reminiscent of our first encounter. Yet this time there was no hesitation. Guilt enveloped us as we surrendered to the undeniable connection that had developed over weeks. The kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, while Eleanor's hand caressed the back of my neck, drawing me nearer. My heart raced, and my skin tingled with a moment's intensity, as if the world had vanished, leaving only the two of us enveloped in a tempest of illicit longing. We eventually separated, both panting, our foreheads touching as we endeavored to restore our composure. The surroundings faded into obscurity, and for a brief instant it seemed as though we were the sole inhabitants of the universe. "We should probably cease," I murmured, my voice barely audible against her lips, though the sentiment felt vacuous. My hands remained on her waist, hesitant to release their grip. A gentle smile graced Elena's lips as she tenderly stroked my cheek. "Do you genuinely wish to stop?" she queried, her voice a smooth whisper that elicited goosebumps down my spine. I hesitated, my pulse racing against my ribs like a confined bird. "I don't know," I confessed, my tone infused with uncertainty. "I simply do not wish to complicate matters." "Perhaps we're not complicating things," she said, her forehead still resting against mine, our breaths mingling in the space between us. "Perhaps we're simply exploring the unknown." Her words resonated within me, a spark of truth igniting amidst the confusion. This didn't feel like a mistake or a transgression against the sanctity of our family bond. It felt like an awakening, a discovery of a connection that had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to blossom. "I don't know what we're supposed to do," I admitted, my voice barely audible, a confession whispered against her lips. Elena leaned closer, her eyes locking with mine, a silent promise reflected in their depths. "But I know," she whispered, and before I could utter another word, she captured my lips in a passionate kiss. It was a kiss that unleashed a torrent of emotions, a release of all the pent-up longing we had both been harboring. We surrendered to the moment, our bodies entwined, our souls connecting in a dance of forbidden desire. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and liberating all at once. The intensity of our emotions consumed us, and before I knew it, the moment had passed. But Elena didn't seem to mind. It was a shared experience. There was a silent acknowledgement of the undeniable bond that united us. As she withdrew, a playful smile gracing her lips. "We'll figure it out," she assured, before ascending the stairs, leaving me breathless and longing for more. I nodded, yet I understood that it would not be straightforward. We had crossed a threshold into uncharted territory, and there was no turning back. In the subsequent days, reality became a surreal amalgamation of normality and heightened awareness. Every glance, every touch, and every shared moment was imbued with an unspoken intensity. We did not articulate what had transpired, but the connection between us was unmistakable, an imperceptible thread woven through our every interaction. I endeavored to uphold my customary routine, yet the world appeared altered, sharper, more vibrant. I was acutely cognizant of Eleanor's presence, her every movement, her every breath. The atmosphere crackled with unexpressed desires, transforming each encounter into a delicate interplay of anticipation and trepidation. One evening, approximately a week later, we found ourselves alone in the house once more. My father and Catherine were out for dinner, leaving us enveloped in a silence that magnified our unvoiced emotions. I sat at the kitchen table, fighting interest in a magazine, yet my thoughts were consumed by Elena, by the recollection of her kiss, by the forbidden yearning that ignited within me. Elena entered the kitchen, her movements poised and intentional. My heart raced as she seated herself across from me, the dim light casting shadows across her face, her expression inscrutable. "We need to talk," she stated with a voice both gentle and resolute. I set the magazine aside, my heart racing. I had been apprehensive about this conversation, aware it was inevitable. We could no longer feign ignorance of the undeniable truth that loomed between us. "Yes," I replied, my voice revealing my anxiety. "I suppose we do." Elena leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table, remaining silent for a moment as her gaze bore into me, seemingly searching for the appropriate words. The silence was thick and oppressive, laden with unexpressed emotions. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "I don't know how we were supposed to act." I nodded, swallowing hard, my mind wrestling with the answers I had yet to confront, the truth resonating in my words.